Ted Bundy was by all accounts a charismatic, charming young man. A master of manipulation, he exuded a magnetic allure that allowed him to weave through society unnoticed, his true nature lurking beneath the surface. As we unravel the dark and twisted story of this infamous killer, we must first understand how Bundy's charm played a pivotal role in his ability to elude capture for so long. Born in Burlington, Vermont on November 24, 1946, Theodore Robert Cowell's early life wasn't one of tragedy or abuse. Raised by his mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, Ted was told his father was absent, and he was initially led to believe that his mother was his sister. This web of deception became a foundational element of Bundy's psyche. It was during his childhood that he began to experience the first signs of the darkness that would ultimately consume him. As he grew older, Bundy was described as shy and introverted, struggling with social interactions. But beneath this quiet demeanor, something far more sinister was festering. Bundy's early adulthood was marked by an unassuming but undeniably attractive persona. His good looks, intelligence, and ability to make others feel at ease drew people in. He was charming and confident, traits that made him particularly dangerous when paired with his cunning and manipulative tendencies. Those who met him often described Bundy as an engaging, likable person who could easily be trusted. Yet this persona was merely a facade. Bundy's first serious criminal act came at the age of 22 when he abducted and murdered a young woman named Linda Mae Healy in Washington. Healy was an attractive 21-year-old college student at the University of Washington, and her disappearance was just the beginning of Bundy's reign of terror. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Bundy's charm allowed him to escape detection for years. He seemed like the all-American boy next door, someone who could never be a killer. He was even involved in political campaigns, presenting a picture of a well-adjusted, responsible young man. But as Bundy's criminal spree continued, his ability to evade the law grew. His method of luring his victims, often college-aged women, was methodical. He would feign injury or incapacity, using crutches or a cast to appear vulnerable. This false portrayal of weakness made his victims more likely to trust him. Bundy would ask for help with his car or request that they assist him with an injured arm. Once they were close enough, he would overpower them, often leading them to a secluded area where the attacks would take place. As the body count grew, the police began to take notice. However, Bundy's charm was enough to keep him one step ahead of the law. He was questioned multiple times, but his demeanor and likable nature made it hard for authorities to connect him to the gruesome killings. They simply could not reconcile the image of the handsome, articulate man they saw with the brutal murders that were occurring in the region. Bundy's reign of terror spanned several years, with victims scattered across multiple states, including Washington, Utah, and Colorado. The police were baffled, and the public grew fearful of the killer lurking in their midst. His ability to blend in, to be just another face in the crowd, is what made him so terrifying. Ted Bundy was not an outcast. He was one of us. This fact alone made his crimes even more chilling. Despite the fear and confusion surrounding his killings, Bundy's charm continued to serve him well. He was able to deceive those around him into thinking that he was an innocent bystander, a victim of mistaken identity. Even when his true nature began to surface, many were unwilling to believe that someone as seemingly normal as Bundy could be capable of such atrocities. Yet there were cracks in the facade. As the bodies piled up and the evidence against him mounted, Bundy's ability to manipulate others began to wane. His behavior became more erratic, and the police began to zero in on him. But even then, Bundy was able to escape, committing further crimes while evading capture once more. By the time he was finally arrested in 1975, Bundy had left behind a trail of terror, heartbreak, and confusion. He was convicted of the kidnapping and murder of several women, although his crimes spanned over a longer period and included countless other victims. His trial captivated the nation as people struggled to reconcile the charming, articulate man they saw on television with the brutal killer who had terrorized them for years. Despite his conviction, Bundy's story was far from over. His trial, subsequent conviction, and ultimate execution only added to the mystery surrounding his life. In the years following his arrest, Bundy continued to manipulate those around him, even from behind bars. He was a master at weaving tales of his innocence, and his ability to charm even those who knew him as a killer was both disturbing and fascinating. The case of Ted Bundy serves as a chilling reminder that evil can take many forms. Bundy was not a monster who emerged from the shadows. He was a man who walked among us, a man whose charisma and charm allowed him to commit unspeakable acts without ever raising suspicion. The story of Ted Bundy is a testament to the power of deception, and it serves as a warning of the dangers of blind trust and misplaced faith in appearances. As we continue to explore the life and crimes of Ted Bundy, we begin to see the full scope of his manipulation and the terrifying lengths he went to in order to conceal his true identity. His ability to blend in, to deceive, and to charm made him one of the most notorious killers in American history. As we continue to explore the twisted tale of Ted Bundy, the truth about his terrifying double life becomes even more complex. When we left off, Bundy had been captured and convicted, but that was not the end of the story. His manipulative nature and remarkable ability to charm would continue to captivate the public, even as his dark secrets were slowly revealed. This part delves deeper into Bundy's final years, his psychological breakdown, and the chilling confessions that would come to haunt the nation. After his arrest in 1975, Bundy was charged with multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and sexual assault. However, it wasn't until later, when Bundy was awaiting his death sentence in Florida's death row, that he finally began to unravel the full scope of his horrific crimes. Bundy's early defense during his trial was one of sheer manipulation. He continued to maintain his innocence, refusing to admit guilt. His charm remained his weapon even in the courtroom, where his good looks and eloquent speech convinced some people, both jurors and the public, that he might not be capable of such crimes. Even in his darkest moments, Bundy maintained a sense of control over the narrative, making it difficult for anyone to fully grasp the extent of his depravity. Yet, as time passed, something began to change within Bundy. His once unshakable confidence started to waver. With the mounting evidence against him and his conviction looming, Bundy's facade began to crack. He realized that his attempts to escape justice were futile, and so he began to change his approach. It was during this time, after his conviction, that Bundy began to confess to the murders. But these confessions were not straightforward. They were manipulative and calculated.
Bundy's confessions were not an expression of remorse or guilt, but a reflection of his continued need to control the narrative and his audience. He would provide details of his crimes only when it suited him, withholding key information and embellishing certain aspects to suit his own ego. His confessions were often disturbingly casual, as though he were recounting a mere anecdote rather than revealing the grisly truth. He would describe the murders in a detached manner, almost as if he were discussing someone else's actions. One of the most chilling aspects of Bundy's confessions was his lack of empathy. He spoke about his victims not as people, but as objects, targets of his obsession. His ability to separate himself from the horror of his actions demonstrated the coldness at his core. As he detailed the manner in which he abducted, tortured, and killed his victims, it became evident that Bundy was not just a killer. He was a predator, hunting those he saw as weak or vulnerable. His ability to objectify them, to reduce them to mere things to be discarded once he had no use for them, was a testament to the darkness that consumed him. Bundy's manipulative nature continued even in his confessions. He often tried to paint himself as a misunderstood individual, claiming that his actions were the result of external pressures or circumstances. He spoke of his addiction to pornography and how he believed it influenced his violent behavior. Yet these explanations were not admissions of guilt or responsibility. They were part of Bundy's ongoing effort to deflect blame and garner sympathy. The idea that Bundy could see himself as a victim of his circumstances rather than accepting full responsibility for his actions only highlighted his twisted sense of entitlement.
As the years went by, Bundy's demeanor changed in prison. He became more introspective, but not in the way one might expect. His introspection seemed more about self-preservation than any real desire to understand his actions. His charm, while still present, became more subdued, and he began to focus more on his own survival. Bundy's ability to charm, even from behind bars, never fully disappeared. He continued to manipulate those around him, from prison staff to fellow inmates, and even managed to form relationships with some of his lawyers and visitors. The most shocking part of Bundy's final years was his time on death row. It was there, in the final moments of his life, that Bundy began to reveal the full extent of his crimes. In a series of interviews, he admitted to killing at least 30 women, though some experts believe the actual number may have been higher. His victims were diverse, coming from various backgrounds and locations, but they all shared one thing in common. They were young, vulnerable, and trusting. Bundy's modus operandi never varied. He used his charm, his intelligence, and his good looks to lure women into dangerous situations where he would overpower them, assault them, and ultimately take their lives. The victims were often left in remote areas, sometimes raped, sometimes decapitated, each murder more horrific than the last. Bundy's final moments were filled with a sense of resignation. As he sat on death row, awaiting his execution, Bundy became more and more introspective, but still there was no true repentance. There was no real sorrow for the lives he had taken, only a deep sense of frustration that he would never be able to completely control the story of his life. Bundy was executed on January 24, 1989, by the electric chair at Florida State Prison. He was 42 years old. His execution marked the end of a long and bloody chapter in American criminal history.
But even in death, Bundy's story did not end. His legacy would linger long after his execution. The media frenzy surrounding his trial, his confessions, and his execution made Bundy one of the most infamous serial killers in history. His ability to manipulate, his disturbing charisma, and his complete lack of empathy for his victims made him a symbol of the dangers of unchecked evil. Bundy's story would inspire countless books, documentaries, and films, all seeking to understand the mind of a killer who seemed so normal on the outside, yet was so monstrous on the inside. Ted Bundy's life and crimes serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can reside within a person, no matter how charming or normal they may appear. His ability to deceive and manipulate those around him allowed him to carry out his gruesome crimes for years without detection. His story is a stark warning that appearances can be deceiving and that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who blend in the most seamlessly. As we conclude the story of Ted Bundy, we are left with more questions than answers. What drove him to commit such atrocities? Was he born with an inherent evil, or was he shaped by his experiences? And perhaps most chilling of all, what would have happened if he had never been caught? These questions may never be fully answered, but one thing is certain. Ted Bundy will forever be remembered as one of the most infamous killers in history, a man whose charm and charisma hid a terrifying darkness beneath the surface.